Hi all. So the first part of our lecture today is comparing traditional education to Web 2.0 education. There's several areas I'd like to discuss, and the first area is the role of the teacher and the student. In the traditional classroom, the teacher would write their notes on the board, their homework assignments on a board, and make the student write this information in a journal, a notebook, or some kind of, paper-based solution. Nowadays, there are tools such as the Kindle where the student can read their textbooks on an electronic device. There's cell phones and smartphones where the student can copy their notes, send text messages, call themselves up, iPods to record lectures, and even tablet computing. And this will be a big thing. There are even schools who give the students laptops. Now, one of the problems in a Web 2.0 culture is what is considered permissible. There's a lot of question about privacy and security. You can invade a student's privacy by asking them to gain access, but you also need to make sure that they're capturing the essence, or at least the overall theme and message of what you're trying to teach them. So preparing the materials and distributing them electronically is more along the lines where a lot of faculty are going in the classroom today, and they use tools such as blogs, which we are going to be discussing next week, and a little bit later on in this lecture, to go ahead and inform the parent. So I think that's the first thing, is the role has changed, and the tools that are being afforded to the students are increasing the responsibility of the teacher, but also the implications of if the teacher goes too far, it becomes problematic. So not everything about Web 2.0 is peachy, as I would say. So let's move on to the next concept of sorts, as I go through the slide deck. The biggest thing that you have to realize is homework is going to be a shared responsibility for both the teacher and the student, but what about the parents? Parents, when the student is younger, typically helps the student. So let me give you an example. A student has a geometry or an algebra homework assignment, and frankly, I don't know about you, but if I was to have a child today, even though I'm in the math area, I would still need some assistance. So 10 years ago, there were no such thing as algebraic calculators online, and if they were, they probably weren't too accurate. But now you can go to at least a half a dozen sites, the parent can plug in the variables, and voila, they get the answer. How is it that they're going to explain to their student or their child how to do the homework assignment? It's forced learning for them, but it's also cheating in a way, because they're not going to go ahead and understand how to apply the concept unless they do the homework themselves. So technology affords us this great ability to get the right answer, but is it helpful to the student? One of the big arguments, and in mathematics education in particular, is the use of calculators. Do you use a calculator during the learning process or after the student has mastered the process? So, parents can check homework, parents can check, the journals and the logs, but parents don't want to have that kind of responsibility. They take the easy way out. Of course, the first thing they're going to typically do is Google, the response or the question. So parents need to be educated about quote-unquote responsibility in using electronic tools as part of their child's education, because if they aren't, then the student A, may not perform as well, and B, it's a disservice to the student because they're not going to get the maximum out of their learning experience. Moving on in topics, I think that it's really important. It says something about studying as well. Studying, students have textbooks, but students don't need to go ahead and go to a Xerox machine. They can do digital note-taking, or they can text message, and that brings up the concept of cheating, because if a student is given a set of notes, it can be a little bit more dynamic, but at the same point, what is considered too dynamic? The student can change the information, distribute the wrong information, and let me give an example. Let's say a student is out because they're sick for 2 days, and they call up their friend and say, hey, I need notes. Well, digital distribution, if the student who copied the notes copied it wrong, well then two people in your class are going to have it wrong. So, and if your class is 20 students, guess what? That is 10% of your class who's getting a false grade. So one of the things I recommend is students should be given the notes or be requested to rewrite the notes. They should be able to construct their own knowledge, but you need to spoon feed them the knowledge and give them the key terminology. And any kind of assignment really should be constructive in nature if you want the student to learn the skill. Testing is great for fundamentals, but outside the fundamental realm, if you're going to be using Web 2.0, they should be able to construct the knowledge and not be taught the knowledge in regurgitation. That's why I don't believe in testing. In all the years I have been teaching, I have given one class testing, and that was in a programming languages course, because you can build a program, but you also need to learn the skills. I have never given a test in uses of technology in education, advanced technology in education, or any class I've taught a GW, because frankly it doesn't make sense. It's better to apply knowledge than to regurgitate knowledge. And that's really what it comes down to, is that studying is something that could create a problem for student learning later on. Okay, so moving on to research. It used to be that a student would have to go to a card catalog and they would look for resources, or they would have to go to the library and a paper would be 5, 6, 7 pages. Well, now there are things called search engines, and almost every school library has some kind of digital resource. And it's important for you as the educator to teach the student how to search the information on the internet, how to use the search engine properly, how to use Web 2.0 tools, but also to find out what's considered authoritative. There's a lot of digital resources out there, and we're going to discuss some of the Web 2.0 tools, such as podcasting, wikis, blogs, vlogs, picture and video sharing services. Students at the K through 12 age don't necessarily know what's considered authoritative or what's considered quality material. For example, a lot of students, I'm sure, would use Wikipedia because it's essentially the first thing that comes up on a search engine. But what is considered quality? What is considered accurate information? That is your responsibility. Are they going to say Facebook is accurate and responsible? Well, if it's their friend, sure. If it's considered a public figure, sure. But even then, it's a tool that is dynamically changing. You need something that's as static as possible. So if you go to an electronic journal for, educational related materials, or a Washington Post, a New York Times, those are more reliable because they come from quote unquote first sources. But putting together a report from research on the internet is actually more perplexing because you have to bring a lot of different moving pieces together, and the citation of the information is really difficult. As graduate students, I'm sure that you've come into play where you've had to write large papers, where there's been large bibliographies, and it took time to research. If you were to have gone to a library, you would typically outline the entire topic matter, whereas online, pulling resources from different websites, it actually takes a lot longer. A 100-page paper for, a doctoral student or a master's degree student 10 years ago would probably take 6 months to a year if it was, a thesis, a dissertation. Now it's a 2 to 2.5 year process because of information overload. So research is one of those areas where you need to curtail the learning experience because information overload can actually hinder the learning process. But it's great because you have all these pieces of information at your fingertips. Now let's talk about, the speaking 2.0. Tools such as Flickr and YouTube, and you're even seeing me talk. I talk a lot differently on a YouTube or a website because I know I'm concise. I have to get to the point. Whereas in a class, you can go off on tangents. You can go ahead and speak freely. But for some students, speaking online is actually a tool to help them because they may be shy. And if it's in a discussion forum, they may express themselves more textually, or if they have to present a video, they be more confident because they can edit it. So using speaking tools and the internet as a fusion of sorts may actually be a help. On the other hand, you're limiting yourself constructively, whereas in the classroom, you can have active engagement. Each one of you is passively being involved in the process by learning online, but yet by using the discussion forums asynchronously, you're still building a dialogue. The dialogue can shift greatly in an online paradigm from week to week, whereas in the classroom, it's very consistent. So trying to build a consistent environment where you set the expectation is important. Using the forums, for example, this week, there's 2 questions, there's a resource gallery, and there's a couple of videos. It's straightforward. The playing field is evened out, and each week the format is essentially the same. Finally, it's the tutoring 2.0. Tutoring is great online. You can do reiteration, but at the same time, chat and collaboration can actually, once again, cause more hindrance. A teacher can go ahead and have online office hours. For example, we are doing online office hours. You can ask me a question, but in the classroom, you have that larger dynamic of sorts. And it's important for you to be crystal clear, get to the point, and move on. And make sure your student understands what they're getting conveyed across the internet. Whereas in the classroom, you can stop, you can pause. The student is really left to their own perils in the online environment. And it's more of a self-exploratory process, and it may take a little bit longer. One of the ways I recommend for tutoring is having school websites with lots of resources. And one of the tools to use in the Web 2.0 environment is social bookmarking sites where you can point the student to those resources online for the additional help. You can also provide them electronic study guides and videos such as what we're doing here today to go ahead and increase their knowledge and awareness. So the final topic we're going to be talking is about cheating. And it's one of these things where teachers don't want to deal with because they know it takes into their learning time, and it's a lot more administrative than it's really necessary. Text messaging in the classroom is the #1 way students in the upper school level and the college level, believe it or not, cheat. There's issues of plagiarism. There's pre-written reports, and technology affords us this ability to go ahead and easily copy, and you need to educate the student on quote-unquote proper etiquette. For example, I can go ahead and present this lecture, but this lecture is a compilation of other resources, and I'm not going to lie, but I've rewritten the lecture geared towards you as the class. But I could have easily taken the slide deck where I just gave it to you and said, that's it. That's the problem. Students can do that easily. And they can outsmart faculty. There are many of you who probably can be outsmarted by your student, and frankly, I've been outsmarted by some of my students, and I'm in IT. So, technology can mask students' real capabilities, and that's really a problem. So, making sure the assignments are authentic and that they provide a creative level of sorts, and there's an even playing field for all students to learn the material instead of stealing the material, that's really important. And if you are going to do a digital assessment, you need to make the assessment not question-based and multiple choice, checkbox-based, but open-ended, because no 2 students are going to write the same answer. Essay-based exams, great if you're going to make it digital. But if it's multiple choice, it's very easy to cheat. Okay, so that is the component about Web 2.0 versus the traditional classroom paradigm. We're now going to shift in the next subject to what is social media and the different kind of social media tools.